okay, a lot of people say, if you had a time machine, you would go back in time, and a lot of, I'm sure, would say, I would love to go back in time to see the dinosaurs. I would love to see dinosaurs. For me, I would love to go back in time and see Spielberg's face when the special effects guys say, you need to move the camera for the special effects to work. The first time ever in film history. Because a lot of times it's stop motion, you had to just set the camera for the action to take place. And here, they're telling him, you have to move the camera in order to be effective. And his face had to be like, I finally get to do what I want? This is going to be fast. I would love to see the reaction, go back in time and see his face when it had it.
See, I want to go back in time to when they told him that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was having the heebie-jeebies. I don't know if you've seen the video of this, but like it would go through these little, like circuit motions where the T-Rex would be like,
it was just like
shaking and stuff,
like electronic twitch.
I would love to be able to hear when that happens, but maybe we'll go further back, see the dinosaurs, then come back to the time when the book was written, then come back to the time the movie was made, and then finally here to see the new movie.
Yeah, the new movie.
While we talk Jurassic Park,
the first one.
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Our show is on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow us and contact us that way. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals. And since the new Jurassic Park is coming out, we figured it's a good time to talk about the first one, Jurassic Park of 1993.
Yeah, this will be fun because if you don't know the story, it's like I'm not going to give you much more info, but I'll do my best. When paleontologist Alan Grant and paleobotanist Ellie Sattler are invited to the tropical island of Isla Nublar to give feedback on a nearly completed theme park, they do not know what they are getting themselves into. They soon realize that their host, John Hammond, has found a way to bring long-extinct dinosaurs back to life through cloning and genetic engineering. Alan and Ellie are first overcome with joy, but their weekend plans are ruined when the power goes out and the dinosaurs are released from their enclosures.
So one of the most fascinating things they don't ever bring up about dinosaurs, I think, is the most fascinating thing, and you can Google it. Dinosaurs could smell in stereo. Like we hear in stereo, like if you hear noise, you know where the direction is and how far it is and what it is, the song. They did that with smell. Their hearing was awful. So it's almost like we switch places. Like our smell is awful. Like somebody, pretty much in dinosaur world, you know who farted.
Yeah.
And how far and where what it was. And how long ago it was. But for them, hearing was like, what? Huh? But then this is just a different world. That's something you don't bring up in the world.
Well, I think that boils down to the big thing. Having been, I'm a Michael Crichton fan. Just on the outside, he's my second favorite author of all time. I've read nearly everything he's written, and I read the book numerous times. In the translation of putting this book into this movie, this is one of the most well-adapted films I've ever seen because they get some of the fat out, retain the meat of the story. But there are things like what you mentioned, sound that's covered in the book but not in the movie. There's more explanation into how life eventually finds a way, like Given in Precipice. A lot of the exposition is done that Mr. DNA gives away in the film is done in a lot of like exposition-heavy scenes.
Right.
And then there's also elements of like, the dinosaurs may have had feathers, like just all these things that like may have been true that we've learned more about over time. And it just goes to show you how much we're still learning about dinosaurs 30 years later, even though this film is still very fresh in mind. But it's one of the most well-adapted books because they find a way to get all the important bits. And all the stuff that gets excised from this book shows up in one of the later sequels.
Well, I think that's
so cool.
Why Spielberg's so effective. He finds the right time to do the exposition. Let's do a helicopter ride. We'll make the helicopter ride fun, a little interesting, but you get your exposition out of the way too. Let's have a great dinner scene. Let's have a carnival ride of here's the lab. Bye bye. What? It's a ride. No, it's not. Yeah. So you get action as well as the exposition, and Spielberg's a master at that.
And not only that. Sure, he gives a lot of exposition during the helicopter ride, during the dinner, during the explanation scene of it, but he teases you with the dinosaurs. You don't see it in the opening.
No, he does the Val Lewton thing of just have the bushes in the shaking like.
And then they show like it getting fed, but you don't see it getting fed. And then he gives you this one majestic shot of dinosaurs, herbivores in the background, and it's still like watching it even now takes my breath away seeing it. Yeah. And then he teases you. You don't get our villain, I guess, our T-Rex, until like 45 to 50 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, he has
and
a
when
great
you
head.
do finally get that moment, it's like the shark and Jaws finally showing up, where you're
It's
like
Shark
just
and Jaws.
taken
It's almost
back.
like the King Kong.
Yeah,
Like we hear him coming. And
yeah. To even go through the big doors.
Yeah, in fact, this is almost like a celebration, almost like they use a lot of references to King Kong, even the doors. Even Jeff Goldblum says, "What are we entering King Kong?"
Yep.
And so there's a lot of like homage to the old movies, like New Hollywood, which Spielberg is attached to, would do. They homage to the old movies, and it's almost like going back to King Kong. King Kong's an island, Scott, and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's got a bit more subtlety than some directors about how he includes his homage, and he chooses to include homage that it's strange because it is almost in front of you, but his subtlety works because you should think of King Kong when you think of Jurassic Park, just because it's the giant monster, in the enclosure.
He did fight dinosaurs too.
Yeah, and he fought dinosaurs in every single version of that story. So having that on display just showcases that Spielberg has a love for what's come before, but he also is really clever about using it. Again, going back to exposition, it's really hard to fit book exposition into a movie. It is extremely difficult.
In a movie,
and
you could just like dump it in.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, we notice it. We notice it when it's dumped. When you have that character that's been written into the film just to give out a like explanation for what's happening. And it's so clever that the Mr. DNA thing was done, because I don't even know if that's in the book. It might be referenced, but like it's just given to you all at that one time, and it's done in a fascinating way that you literally don't realize you're being fed information for 45 minutes of this movie.
So let's talk a little bit about writing before we get even farther. It was written by Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton did the screenplay, but the final draft was written by David Koepp, who also wrote, like we talked about, Carlito's Way. I think one of my interesting movies, I don't know if you can find it, Apartment Zero is one of his first screenplays. It's a fascinating book, fascinating movie with Colin Firth. But his first directorial, I believe, because you're a Stephen King fan, was
Secret Window. I'm a big fan of that one.
And he's gone on to direct other movies.
He wrote Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, everyone.
He wrote that one.
So I like David Koepp. I think he's got his hands in a lot of
final
pies.
draft. So he been cleaned up a little bit.
And here's what happened too: is this is another case where Universal, there was a huge bidding war. There was like 4 studios fighting for this before the book was finished.
The same thing happened with Fight Club. Before it was even finished, people wanted this.
And so Universal paid $1.5 million for the rights to the book, and then they paid a further $500,000 to Crichton to pen a screenplay. And his screenplay, again, like does a great translation of his book, and it's again tough to do when you have the writer of the book translate their own work. And I think it's a smart idea to throw someone who's capable, like a David Koepp, in, who can just kind of maneuver things around, do a nice polish on things, and make it movie capable.
Right, because you're going to do your Kurosawa that Spielberg likes to do. You're going to get your action out of the way, almost dance around a horror movie. There's horror movie elements in it. He's getting close to that R rating as possible.
Spielberg has spent his whole career dancing around horror and never really going there as a director.
I know, yeah.
With Koepp as well, though, you can see the difference between having a Michael Crichton screenplay and not having a Michael Crichton screenplay in the difference between Jurassic Park and The Lost World. Now, I was a big fan of The Lost World when it came out. When I read the book for The Lost World, I realized, number one, why they didn't adapt the book very well, because the book has like 4 characters in it. And it's like 4 people moving around.
2 archaeologists, and then the gamekeeper.
There's like 2 guys in the evil crew in that, and you can see that they didn't include Michael Crichton as a director or as a writer on that, but they had Koepp translate the book anyway, and you can see that they just Spielbergified. They just went over the top making that one work. And that's why I don't think that movie is as good, is because it loses the simplicity of that book. Whereas this film retains, it's a very simple story.
Oh, well,
I mean, it's literally, we're seeing dinosaurs for the first time. Someone pulls the plug, they get out.
I mean, I went in when I saw it when I was a teenager in '93. You're not going to see everybody getting along.
Yeah.
You're going to see Jurassic Park, the things to go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just surprised when the only person on your side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
Blood-sucking lawyer. Right.
So you saw this in theaters.
Twice. I went with my dad and then a group of friends of ours, because I was like, we got to see this again. I want to see this again because it's like the first time you ever see CGI this effective, and you move the camera as well.
So let me tell you this about me, because you guys know I'm a huge horror fan. I'm rare. I always like to find those films that scare me, because nothing scares me anymore, and I kind of I've lost that ability to get scary.
Yeah.
I saw this film. This was my brother was a big Crichton fan, owned the book, read the book, went to see the movie, bought the movie when it came out. We had the VHS tape. Yeah. I tried to watch this movie a dozen times at least.
As a kid?
Yep. And I made it about 45 minutes in when that goat gets eaten and the dinosaur eats Gennaro, and I turned it off, and I said, nope, not watching this. And I was a kid that had seen Halloween at this point, Child's Play 2, numerous other horror
But there's
films.
kids in the movie.
Yeah, something about this movie, and I was a huge dinosaur fan growing up too. Like, I love dinosaurs. I knew I had to get through this movie. And every time I'd get there and I'd be like, nope, not today. And I'd turn it off and I'd leave the room. And I still to this day don't know what scared me so much about it. It actually came down to a neighbor coming over to babysit me for my parents.
Anticipation, right?
Yeah. This neighbor kid came over to watch me while my parents were out of town. And he said, we're going to order a pizza. We're going to get some soda. And you and I are going to get through this movie tonight. and he even said, he goes, if we have to turn it off, walk away for a little bit and come back, we will.
All right.
But we're getting through it. And I will always thank him for that. Because it was like overcoming a fear, and now this is, I'm not joking, this is maybe one of my top 10 favorite films of all time.
It's it has the right pacing for it, because it's a summer blockbuster movie. It's full popcorn entertainment.
Highest grossing movie of all time when it came out.
It was, because just like me, people went to see it. I remember people seeing it and go back in line to go see it again. It's one of those kind of movies, just like Jaws.
Yeah. When I finished it the first time with that neighbor,
we go back.
Went right back and watched it again. Because at that point, it was like it was a theme park ride for me.
Right. So it has that theme park ride. It dances on horror as close as possible. And this was probably the reason why you have Sam Neill, because he's done horror movies. And and I think in real life he has disdain for kids.
Well, I was even talking with one of our Twitter followers who we talked about how Sam Neill is really terrifying in Event Horizon. And I had pointed out, like, Sam Neill has been low-key horror icon for decades. It's just we know him from Jurassic Park. You know, we know him from movies like this and not from movies like Omen 3 and Event Horizon and Daybreakers and all these other things that he's done in his career. He's been a low-key horror icon, and I think it's fitting to put that guy in your front and center of your not horror movie.
I think I was aware of it when I saw it in '93. He's very much the anti-Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Although
he doesn't want to embrace the journey or he doesn't want to do the action. He just wants to find a dig and actually do a job and just leave me the hell alone.
Yeah, it's almost like someone split one person in half, and like the id and the ego became Indiana Jones and Alan Grant.
But he's also disdain for the future, what the future is gonna. He's always past, right? He's obsessed with past events. And here's the new advances of digging and technology. What's the fun of this? It just does take away from digging, where you find you can just surface. Oh, there it is.
Yep. He's so preoccupied with the past, he's not willing to focus on his own future. That's why he's kind of got this romantic, unromantic entanglement with Sadler, but also like, I don't want to have kids because I don't want to be able to move towards the future.
Because that's going to slow me down, right? And kids are slimy, smell. They smell.
Yeah, babies smell.
And smell. But there's an interesting thing he puts in the movie, Spielberg, which is the seatbelt thing. Now, the seatbelt thing is
so clever.
It's clever because you're like, all right, I don't have a seatbelt, so he just ties himself for. So you show right away that he's able to figure out things.
Well, not only that, but the seatbelt, he has two female ends, and he finds a way to make them work.
Yeah.
It's very much a setup for the eventuality of that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things when you see that, how clever that is, that Spielberg is showing you two female ends that find a way to come together. He's literally telling you what the back half of the movie is going to be about. Which
and
I think
Lauren
is
Dern's
such a good
little
thing.
injections,
Oh, yeah.
Man eats world, and then women take over.
Yeah.
And then the two guys look over, and she's like, I'm right.
Yeah, and look who takes over Jurassic World later on. It's a female that's in charge of the whole show.
I think it's funny that people are discovering that Lauren Dern was like 25 when she made this movie.
Yeah, that's been coming out recently too. Is the 20-year like time difference between the two?
Yeah,
I always just thought that he was much younger, Sam Neill.
All right, so I would like to also bring up cinematography as somebody we talked about before his movies previously. It's Dean Cundey, who did The Thing, The Fog, Back to Future. So he's worked with Spielberg before, and he knows how to do the fast action pacing. But I'm sure when Spielberg told him you have to move the camera to get the special effects to work, he's probably like, what?
Yeah.
Because he danced around like that almost forced perspective for The Thing, where you had to keep the camera still where you do the horror.
Because you got to hide the cables. You got to hide.
You got to hide the magic of watching things tear each other apart. But here you realize how to do the camera work. I really like the cinematography. I think it got nominated.
So the film got nominated for Best Sound, Best Visual Effects, and Sound Effects Editing. Or actually, it won all 3 of those awards. I
Oh,
should
it's
point
just
out
for
as
the
well.
effects,
So
not
yeah,
for
he
it.
did not get an official nomination, but Dean Cundey he's a person who's come from films as small as Halloween with a $200,000 budget.
That's where you started, right?
And
Yeah.
all the way to this film. And he's one of those guys, as a cinematographer, I'm sure among cinematographers, he is a legend. He's not as discussed now as most others are, but he has come from a place where he helped to develop some of the most fascinating cinematography techniques that are still used today.
Right.
You know?
You took the better route of me, what I'm trying
Well,
to
he
say.
walked so that other DPs could run. You know, he did a lot of heavy lifting from a cinematography perspective.
Right. I'm sure, like, the great scene of the dinosaurs running through him as Sam Neill's on the prairie, that it's a Jeep action. Put the camera in the Jeep and just run with it.
Yep.
But there's great times to hold the camera still as T-Rex goes like a knife through the camera and just takes out. Then you have to hold the camera still because that's where you're winning, is with him.
Yep. But
dominating
see,
the
you made a
scene.
great point, though, in that cinematography is not just making the camera stand in the right place, getting the lighting right, making it look pretty. It's not just that. It is a collaborative effort, not just with your director. Your actors need to know where you're going to be so that they can emote in the right way. But also, one that no one ever talks about, your cinematographer has to work with your visual effects team, because they have to do the heavy lifting when he's done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's important that he had that relationship with them. And because looking back at this movie almost 30 years later, I stand by, this is one of the best set of visual effects ever put in a movie. It still looks great. There's a
does.
little bit of lighting you can see. You know, a little bit of lighting difference.
Right, when
that
you
kind of
see the
stands
big,
out.
gigantic.
But it's very, very like minimal. It doesn't affect the viewing at all. This movie looks incredible still. But what that boils down to isn't how much money Spielberg spent on that. It's not how much money the studio did. This is a lesson in what we should be doing now. Nowadays, we can make a movie and turn around in about a year. The reason why this movie looks as good as it does is because they waited and took their time. Every scene was finished. It wasn't race to the end. It was finished. And I think if we could get over the fact that we have to put movies down on a release date calendar now and then move towards the goal and just finish the movie first, we could have movies that look as great as Jurassic Park today.
Well, it's not all that, but you have a great director who can figure things out on set, problem solving.
Yeah, he's not handing off the visual effects either.
So a
He's
lot of-
going to sit in the booth when they're done. So
Yeah, the famous thing of they go to Jurassic Park entrance, the big building, and it's not finished yet. And it was supposed to be finished to shoot in the movie, and they weren't ready.
Yeah.
And Spielberg's like, that's fine. It's part of the movie now.
they're building the park.
They're not ready yet, and they're building the park. So let's just show it as is. And the construction crew that was supposed to build the set are in the movie with their hard hats. They aren't part of the movie.
Yeah,
so
I'm
that's
sure
just Spielberg being clever about how all right, we're not ready for it's not finished yet. We'll show it that way. You're not ready.
That's a very, like we pointed out with Coppola in The Godfather, where he's got an actor that can't do his lines, and he's like, make that the character. You know, it's a very clever way of doing it. I'm sure he went up to Stan Winston and was like, Stan, you do what the dinosaur's done, right? Like, that's one we do. We can't show someone building the dinosaur on film.
But I could see, and it's been documented too, of Sam Neill saying, Spielberg, take off your glasses. You're in so shock. Why would I take off my glasses? Don't you want to see better? No, we're living in movie world. You have to take off your glasses because you're so shocked.
Yeah.
And it does work.
Yeah.
In real world, we don't do that. You're like, what?
In my mind, I'm thinking to myself, he must have fogged them up with his breathing or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it works for movie works. Movie
Yep.
world. Like, you take off your glasses.
Yeah, and only in movie world can any character played by Jeff Goldblum be as enigmatic and completely realistic as he is in this movie.
Right,
He's playing an unrealistic character.
Well, he's the comedy light, right? He's supposed to be
And if I may point out, spoiler alert from the book, he dies in the book, and then they
Malcolm.
write him out in the sequel as, no, he lived. He actually dies in the book from his injuries, and Hammond dies in the book. And in Lost World, Hammond's not in it in the book, but they write in Malcolm as having survived his injuries, but the reports got it wrong. So, Jeff Goldblum, again, coming from the realm of horror with the major hit that was The Fly a couple years.
But he's comfortable
previously.
doing comedy. He was in Buckaroo Banzai.
Well, and even horror comedy. Transylvania 65000, Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah.
He's got kind of that realm of like the goofy comedy as well. He's the reason the movie holds together on a story level, though, is because he's also giving a lot of exposition, but he's so enigmatic and likable that you're just watching his hands move, and you don't care that you're actually taking in info.
Well, when you write a workshop and stuff and talk about characters, like Grant and the other scientists, but you need somebody that's a far more different, flashy.
Yep.
A little more outgoing, a little more extroverted, which is different to them. They're a little more introverted. They're a little more work about the job. And Malcolm sometimes enjoying the roller coaster ride.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting a free meal out of this. A little bit, maybe I'll get a date too.
Yeah. He's there for the ride, not the awe. He's there to kind of just take it in and have some fun.
But
and
he's a little bit when I invented a barometer character.
Yep.
When he's like, let's move it, let's go.
Yeah.
Or like he's telling you, this is not safe. Why is it safe? No, it's...
But that's why I think he's given more to do in the back half of the film, whereas in the novel not as much, because he is that character who can release tension, who can give information in a way that doesn't feel like he's just telling you everything you need to know. And make it fun and enjoyable. And he's a person we find ourselves caring about a lot more than I think we did when we're introduced to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they did effective practical effects too. We talk about special effects, but they did other practical effects. So you have animatronic dinosaur laying in the woods. You have animatronic baby dinosaurs that look far more effective. So, and you have a little. I think the creature with the Tex Newman.
Oh yeah. That's also a partial practical. Then again, that goes back to not just wasting time and money, but taking your time and doing a mix. When you can do practical, you do practical. There are many scenes in this film that are just the practical effect with a little bit of like removing wires, this odd and end here. But then there's also situations where, we have to do the full like dinosaur stepping out in CG. But the reason why the CG doesn't look as aged is because half of it's not CG. And it's an issue, again, going back to... We talked about the original, or the 82 thing. In the 2011 thing, they did practical effects the entire film and then decided they didn't like it, so they just put CG over everything.
They glossed over it.
And you can see how bad CG just on its own is. It's meant to be a tool to enhance the practical effects, and we don't do that enough today either.
Yeah.
We don't build stuff and make it movies.
Well, I think Spielberg's right. You put some of it far away.
Yep.
Get some of it close, but then when you want to quiet down, like the eggs scene, you want to have practical things in the world.
And
tangible.
Richard Attenborough was not a CG actor at that point, so I'm sure it helped his performance immensely to be able to actually interact with a creature as it's being born. Richard Attenborough is of a time period where he hadn't worked in a CG realm. I'm sure like making this movie was very odd for him because he just hadn't experienced it on the level that we do now. And so having that practical effect helps everyone. I think Laura Dern's performance in that scene, Sam Neill with the Triceratops, there's no more like I think that's one of the most wholesome moments in any movie is when he's like laying on it as it's breathing.
Yeah,
you
just
know,
to know that it's real.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's the interaction with the real that makes that scene so good, and even just the giant pile of crap that Jeff Goldblum interacts with.
They had to make dinosaurs had to make some massive amount of waste in the world.
I mean, that's why that's why we didn't have any in Minnesota because that's why it's so flat land afterwards.
But I'm glad you brought up initially in our conversation Jaws, because not only just budget-wise and how it made it return and how it's a summer blockbuster,
and difficulty with the creature,
but also you talking about the monsters are just naturally doing what they are built to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're
not
really
evil.
You're not really evil. They're built to do this. So you're fighting against nature, but are you invading their territory as well? Because you kind of created this mess.
Yeah, the very act of creating the dinosaurs is a man versus nature conflict, and then the very act of dealing with the creation is a man versus nature.
Almost
conflict.
like we talked about Solaris, and then you want to control the situation that you're never going to ever really have control. You can contain it eventually, but they're going to figure out a way.
Yep, and that's one thing I've come to really appreciate about not just this film but this franchise is it seems that every film is at least trying to take an element from what was set up with this movie and see how it works out. Every film kind of takes a different approach to the source material. Some of them don't work at all, and some of them work really well. But it is not a thing where we take the Jurassic Park formula and just keep redoing it over and over again. We're trying to kind of go around in a different way. And I mentioned before, a lot of the action scenes cut from this book, when that was translated, were included in later movies. And I think that's kind of fun as a book reader to be able to see those scenes play out again.
I'm always an apologist for Jurassic Park 3. I really did enjoy it.
I think it's a perfectly watchable popcorn movie. It just doesn't have the thought-provoking nature.
No,
it doesn't really analyze the situation.
What it's for, yeah.
But yeah, it's a little 90-minute, theme park ride of a movie, you know,
I
that
really
you kind of
did
get
enjoy that
invested.
one.
And I think that movie, again, used one of the great scenes from the book that wasn't in the movie for the first film, and that is the pterodactyl cage, which was in the book for Jurassic Park and not used, which probably for the time period.
I'm always an apologist for 3.
I want to talk real quick about Wayne Knight, though.
Okay.
Because Wayne Knight is a comedic actor. He'd done things like Basic Instinct and that stuff, but like he's very well known for his comedic work, even prior to Seinfeld. Because I think he'd done maybe a couple episodes of Seinfeld at this point. He is fantastic as just on the cusp of believable moron. You know, where he's got the book smarts but not the street smarts. He's going to commit a crime and he doesn't realize what he's doing.
What did John Cleese say? He's stupid enough to think he's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like he thinks he can make the escape and get away with it without anyone knowing. But we've all known people that spurned at their jobs that just want to like melt the system down.
And they tell us Dawson, don't be cheap on me. So pretty much you're paying for the meal.
Yep.
Don't be cheap on me.
Yeah.
But he's just that slarmy, you want to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
Which I heard he's a super nice guy.
Mm.
Oh yeah, he's
absolutely.
Yeah.
But he knows how to play a situation and a scene to his strengths, which is really great because he's in one scene. He's in a room with Sam Jackson and Richard Attenborough, and he's the most, enigmatic character of the three of them. Samuel L. Jackson may give the most reserved performance in his entire
This
career.
is a dial down from a
year
year ago.
Yeah. I forget he is in this movie until I watch it, and I'm like, oh yeah, Wayne Knight steals the show for the scenes he shares with legendary Attenborough and very, very memorable screen presence Sam Jackson.
But it had to be a creature smaller than him to take him down.
Yep.
To realize that it's not the size. No matter how big you are, there's somebody smaller than you.
Yep. Because he's underestimating his path.
Yeah.
As he leaves, even in the book, they note this. He notes where he's going because he's going to try and go past the not dangerous ones. And he doesn't realize that, just as Sattler points out, you picked plants for this area because you thought they looked pretty, but they're actually poisonous. Like, they don't understand the science they're dealing with. And that goes back to the life will find a way. He's not prepared to deal with dinosaurs. He just thinks, the small ones are okay.
Right. They can control it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And the movie keeps hitting this ethical quandary so often that you'd think we'd get bored of hearing it, but it just does it in a different perspective every time.
Before we go, I'm going to bring it up. Michael Kahn edited this movie. I almost say directed because he's worked almost exclusively with Spielberg, and this is another one of his movies. So I think he knows Spielberg's pacings. And that's why I think not only his best edited movie, not only directed, because you have to figure out how to put all the pieces together, slow it down, speed it up. But of course, editing is also what content you're taking in as well.
Yep.
So
you're
not going to get a best editing for a popcorn movie. But
didn't Michael Kahn he did both West Side Stories, didn't he? I think he did the original one and the Spielberg one, didn't he?
Well,
I feel like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I know he did Minority Report with Spielberg and a number of other films that they've collaborated on. But it's being the editor is the most thankless job because you literally have to tell.
No, it is making the movie.
It's finishing the movie. If a good edit on a bad movie can save a movie, a bad edit on a good movie can kill a movie. And you're usually the person who's telling the director, remember all that stuff you worked hard on shooting? We're not using any of it. It's a very thankless job. But yeah, it is the movie that comes out at the end is just as much content, especially because Spielberg had to be working on Schindler's List at this time. He was filming Schindler's List while he was in post-production on this film.
That's right.
He tried to get as much involvement as he could with things like, but that's also why the process took longer to finish Jurassic Park, was because he was moving back and forth between the two. But you got to imagine while he was making Schindler's List, Spielberg was like, God, I can't wait till I get a Jurassic Park day. Like, I'm just so depressed right now.
Kind of like you do in E.T. and Poltergeist.
Yeah, or like the Post and Ready Player One, where he's like on the post and it's like this really kind of depressing story about like government corruption. He's like, I can't wait till I can have the video game characters shooting each other again. Like,
right. Yeah, because he's an arcade nut.
Yeah, exactly.
He is an arcade nut. Yeah.
So the film, 3 Oscar wins, was the highest grossing film of all time when it came out. It currently sits on IMDb's top 250 films of all time. It sits at 151 on the top list of all films. 6th film coming out this weekend. Yeah. I say this original film looks better than ever the more I watch it. And it comes down to one of my top 10 films of all time. I love it.
Yeah. And we highly recommend it. So, have you seen Jurassic Park?
For God's sakes, you should. Doing?
Yeah, there's people. I know there's people out there that haven't seen it.
Yeah. So, if you've watched this entire video, then you haven't seen the film, then you spent 27 minutes watching us that you could have been watching Jurassic
It'd be
Park.
interesting to see a lecture from Dr. Grant in Indiana Jones. That would be funny.
Oh, yeah. Well, we get a little bit of that in Jurassic Park 3. but yeah, let us know your thoughts on the original Jurassic Park down below in the comments section. If you haven't seen the film, it is currently streaming on HBO Max, and you can find it from a number of retailers. I think they're even doing a double feature with the original film and Dominion, which would be kind of odd if you hadn't seen any of the other movies. But let us know what you thought about it down below. Is this your favorite Jurassic Park film? Is it your favorite Spielberg film? We'd love to hear it. Is it your favorite Michael Crichton adaptation? He's got a couple. People don't know that he actually created Westworld as well.
What's the one with the gray monkeys?
Congo.
Congo.
Yeah. That's yours?
No.
I was going to say, what's wrong with you?
I don't think that is. I think he's like, what am I writing as he's writing that one?
Yeah, that's one where the book may not even have been ready for a movie. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. While you're down in the comment section, please make sure to like and subscribe.
Yes,
two
please
things
do.
that you can do. They don't cost you anything, and they can help support the channel and make sure you never miss new episodes. You can click that little bell in the corner to make sure you get notifications on new episodes when they drop. And consider donating us one of your cups of coffee every month and joining the Patreon. The link's down in the description. And in doing so, you can help pick some of the various films we'll talk about next. If you want us to cover The Lost World, Jurassic Park, or another film from Spielberg's filmography, please let us know by joining the Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and the podcast you can find anywhere on the internet.
All right. What happened to the goat?